All right. Hope everyone can hear me and see me. Happy Monday, everybody, as I'm recording this. Hope everyone had a great weekend. I had a little milestone, went over 3,000 subscribers. So thanks very much for folks who subscribed. You may have noticed as soon as I posted it, it bounced back down under 3,000. We have since gone back over 3,000. It's one of those things. The numbers, it's a bit of an ego thing. I mean, happy to have them, but they're not quite as meaningful, I think, as they used to be in terms of YouTube's blah blah blah. But still, it's a nice little milestone, and we want to celebrate the small victories. So, huzzah, everyone! Thank you so much. This is Ironwood Gorge, which a friend of the channel, Frederick, was kind enough to send to me. So I didn't ask for it. I am pretty sure that he's not involved at all with Ludibrium Games. He's just a fan of this and was kind enough to send me a copy. So shout out. Thanks so much. Frederick right here. And it seemed about time to take a look at it. I had not heard of this before. Frederick had brought it up multiple times. I haven't heard of Ludibrium Games either, so this is all new to me. This is not new, though. So it looked like this was originally for OSR, published way back in 2011. And it's by Eric Jones. It's part of, I guess, a Blackmarsh series. All right, Frederick says this is NPCs done right. All right, we're gonna. Oops, how do I move? Can I go forward? Here we go. So we've got, okay, let's read the intro here. Along the old North Road lies the lonely Magravate of Blackmarsh. Vile orcs, once a memory in the region, have returned in strength, bringing an end to decades of relative calm. The humble garrison of the Bleak Tower, an outpost on the march, is likely to be overwhelmed. Who will deliver them? If you intend to adventure in Blackmarsh, stop reading here. The following materials are intended for the game master's eyes only. All right, so if you know you're going to be playing this, stop now. Otherwise, we're going to continue on. I'm not going to read, and as usual, I'm not going to read everything exhaustively and religiously, but I feel like, especially when we're coming into kind of a mini micro setting, everything that I really don't know anything about, having some of this context will be helpful. Notes for the GM. The Blackmarsh sequence of adventures, continuing with this module, designed to fit easily into any campaign. Ironwood Gorge also works as a standalone adventure. The central location, the Bleak Tower, is situated along the Old North Road, a wide dirt track that serves as a hinterland trade route. The surrounding area constitutes generally the Magravate of Blackmarsh. Ironwood Gorge is a fairly difficult adventure and includes a few scattered challenges that the party may not be equal to, particularly if they are low level or few in number. It is important that the players have a common sense notion of when to run away. This module is ideally suited to experienced players who enjoy an uphill challenge, offering countless opportunities for their characters to prove themselves. All right. So there we go. So there's the skinny of it. While this is part of a series, should be useful on its own, which is good because I don't know about the rest of the series. And then more or less experienced players, or at least instill your players in the sense of, hey, if this is seeming too much for you, use your brain and exit stage right before things get ugly. I'm just pouring myself some oolong tea for the working man. Okay. So this is OSR, which is good. I'm not going to go through the rest of the prep stuff in particular. I'm assuming it's follows the norms. We have some background on the Black Tower, and we have a prelude. Ooh, this might be interesting. So the prelude is the adventurers have come to the inn at the foot of the Bleak Tower, weary from an arduous trek. Yet before the travelers can doff their heavy armor, a low and baleful sound arrests their ears. A horn calling a long, chilling note from the edge of the wood. The tower bell rings the alarm. The gate is pried open by a pair of guards, who shout for those at the inn to take refuge in the stout walls of the tower. Just then, a pack of 8 war dogs charge out of the forest and come frothing mad at anyone they can catch in the open. The inn folk have only 2 rounds before the dogs are upon them. The player characters can stand and fight if they like, but may be overmatched as 16 orcs are not far behind. They come howling out of the wood, arriving in the 4th round to hurl torches upon the thatch of the inn. The guards loose missiles from the tower windows, but to small effect. The orcs linger for a round or two until they are sure of the inn burning, and then disappear back into the dark of the wood. Of course, the party the party just might be sufficiently powerful, ingenious, or lucky enough to turn back the raid. If they do, or if the player characters in any way flout the threat of orcs by camping visibly outside the tower, for instance, the orcs will return in a few days in greater numbers, roughly double that of the first raid. In the unlikely event that this attack is repelled, the orcs will have been put on their heels. They will remain holed up in their caves until they can return in strength. In the meantime, the adventurers have earned the right to do as they like. So an interesting little, interesting little prelude here. If this is your kind of starter, right, gives you a nice little, people love those. We talked about it last week, I guess, the kind of in media res, the boom in the action of things. So you can just, they get there, they're in the inn, they haven't even gotten there, and bam, here come orcs attack right off the bat to sort of get the mood going. You're introducing the antagonists for this particular adventure. It gives the party something to do, and it also gives them a reason to interact with the Bleak Tower. Potentially, they might have earned some folks' respect depending on how they handle what's happening. If the guards are yelling women and children first, and the party trample them to get inside the gates before them, that probably sets a tone one way. If the party brings up the rear guard and defensives and makes sure that everyone else gets in, and then the last one's in, that sends obviously a much different and probably better message. And of course, if the party stands and fights and does some intriguing stuff, that may help as well. I guess the interesting thing here, and this is just an aside for me, is why are the orcs burning down the inn and then leaving? Seems like an interesting thing. I mean, I wonder, okay, so if the inn is outside the gates, it's vulnerable. Okay, I got that. And the orcs are coming, I guess I get that too. But it's just funny that they're just going to kind of burn the inn down and then leave. It seems like a funny thing. It would be cool, I think, though maybe beyond the scope. But I might think about it if I'm the GM. It's like, okay, so the orcs come. First order of business is they want to get rid of the inn. I don't know. I'm not sure why exactly, but maybe it taunts them because it's outside. It's like what they mentioned about the player characters flouting the threat of the orcs by having something outside the walls. They're going to get rid of it, I guess. I'd like to see what other objective they have. That might be kind of fun too. Is there something in the inn they want or need that they need to destroy, want to just get a hold of? Is there someone in the inn that they may want or need that they're trying to get a hold of? But nice to know, because otherwise it's kind of it's one of those things that probably the players will never actually ask. But if one of those things that kind of seems like it's a little bit of a hanging chadness of like, well, why did they just come and burn down the inn and leave? I don't know. I mean, it could just be, well, they're mad, they're orcs, which is fair enough. Ian said, looks like it's been around 12 years, so I wouldn't expect a part 3. RPG Grandma says they want a killer micro brew. Indeed. And then Frederick says that the initial action is a good binder to form a party if they don't already know each other. Absolutely. Yes. All good points. All good points. But, you just might think about it in terms of a GM, if you're running this for yourself, getting ready to run this, think about maybe some ultimate objective the orcs have. Just burning down the inn to burn down the inn. We could probably do a little bit better than that, but I get it. And it is, like I said, it is like an edge case, because most likely this is just going to happen. Things are going to happen. You can narrate how the more archers come and everything. You can play it off so that the question never gets asked, why didn't they get further? But if on the off chance, depending on dice are rolled, like the orcs managed to burn down the inn with ease, probably don't want them to have them kind of standing around like, oh, well, what do we do now? Like we did this thing, and now what? So it might be good to give them something to do. But I like it. It's a nice way of kind of like, as Frederick Roman, a sort of a party binder, giving them something to do, pushes them in the Bleak Tower, right? Because they might be at the inn. Maybe this is something that you've laid out just kind of on sort of their road somewhere else, but now it's forced them into the tower, which then pushes them into contact with the various folks who I think we're going to meet right now. Oh, Ian said they're working on part 3. Well, fingers crossed. But for now, we'll go inside the Bleak Tower and meet the Seneschal, whose name is Onomaclus, or I don't know how else I pronounce that. Onomaclus. You can get room and board. You can get your provisions. Oops, I need to use the other arrows. We got a rumor table. Not really a table, but a list of rumors. And then something called Besieged. A contingent of orcs continues to harass the tower each night, screaming taunts, beating drums, and sounding horns from the dark wood, sneaking out to cut the throats of any living thing left out in the cold. However, there are only a dozen orcs watching the tower at any given time, and they will generally allow adventurers to come and go unless they look like easy pickings. As time passes, the vile creatures get more and more daring and aggressive, running up crude hook ladders and throwing burning oil through the arrow loops, or leaving impaled captives to be discovered at first light. At full confidence, a crew of orcs will rope together a petrified log and attempt to batter the door down. They will drop the log and flee after a few tries, but close inspection reveals that the door is close to giving in. It is important that these attacks are in some way responsive to the forays of adventurers into Ironwood Gorge. If the players are registering an effect, then the harrying of the tower should let up somewhat. On the other hand, if the players are completely ineffectual for what the game master deems a fair period, then the orcs will come in force, batter down the door at last, and storm the interior. The game master may wish to adjudicate a mass combat with minis, or merely have the party taken captive, but the adventure is lost. I probably want to just do something else than party taken captive, but this I like. So you have a real ticking clock as the party, if presumably the party is using this tower as their home base, so that you can get a good gauge of, oh my gosh, the orcs, oh, what you did worked. We haven't had an orc attack in a while. Don't seem as cocky as they were before, or the party's getting routed every chance they turn. Now the orcs are coming in more and more numbers. So I really like that. I really like the ticking clock. The idea of having kind of a last gasp climactic battle at the tower in some kind of potentially mass combat system, I think is really cool. I just wouldn't narrate it as that party gets taken captive. Like, play it out. Even if it's just the battle's raging in the background and they're being chased or they're trying to get out, however they're trying to do with the orcs, and maybe eventually the orcs get them, cornered and order them to surrender or make some kind of deal, or whether they're able to find some little escape tunnel out some back door somewhere, play it out. But it's a cool ticking clock, and I like that this will give the party will get a real visceral sense of how they're doing as these attacks are either growing or lessening in strength and intensity. We have the map of the tower. We have the map key. There's some dungeon. There's a dungeon, a ground floor, a second floor, a third floor, a fourth floor, and a fifth floor. I'm not reading through those, but they're there for you, which is good because maybe you're going to have to do some escaping, fighting of the orcs inside the tower complex, assuming that the party doesn't go rogue and kill everybody in the tower to take it for themselves, or then unlock the gates from the inside, take some money from the orcs to get them in the tower unscathed. I mean, that's also a trope, right? The betrayer, right, who's inside, gives the besiegers the keys. All right, now we get into the Ironwood. There is no direct path to Ironwood Gorge, but it is found easily enough. One travels northwest from the tower, roughly 5 miles on the Old North Road, then turns north into the looming forest, which the locals call the Ironwood. The seneschal is willing to draw a simple map and give advice about negotiating the ancient weald, but he admonishes the adventurers to be wary of cockatrices and fairy lights. The Ironwood is a foreboding place marked by towering petrified trees hung with leafy lichen. The narrower trunks can be toppled on a successful bend bars roll, dealing 2d6 damage to any creatures caught in the path that fails a saving throw versus death. Note, if bending bars is not included in your rule, simply roll a strength check with a penalty of 12 added to the roll. Penalty of 12, wow. The forest terrain is uneven, marked by gullies and outcrops of stone, but undergrowth is sparse and the ground is otherwise easy to traverse. Young birch trees grow here and there, as do clusters of wildflowers. Black hellebore among them. Characters presumed to have a fair knowledge of woodcraft may make a wisdom check to identify the hellebore. A potent ingested poison can be derived from it in sufficient doses, causing confusion for 24 hours and failing a saving throw versus poison, death in D4 turns. Well, that's nice. Did the orcs know about Hellborn? Hopefully not. Receding north through the Ironwood, roughly 40 miles as the crow flies, one comes to a river, the banks which are steep and thick with ferns. Following the course of the river north and west leads one at last to the mouth of Ironwood Gorge. Wow, so it's quite a ways away. So it's only 5 miles till you get to the edge of the wood that's surrounding wood, but then it's 40 miles through that wood to actually get to the gorge. And that's 40 miles as a crow flies. So your party's not going to be able to travel 40 miles in a straight line. Let's see. The banks. 40 miles of crow flies when it comes to the river. Oh, did I read that? I think I did. Okay. Following the course of the river north and west. Okay, they don't say how long that is, so probably even more than 40 miles. 40 miles just gets to the river, which then leads you towards the gorge. We got some random encounters every 2 hours spent marching in the hour. Wow, that's a lot. So when you're in the Ironwood, you're getting a lot of encounters, potentially 2 hours. A 1 on a 1 in 6. So you're getting, that's 16%, but multiplied by, I don't know, say 8 hours marching. So that's 4 checks. So it's a pretty busy wood, pretty active. So the creatures we can get are, I'm just going to just rattle off the names here. We can get some will-o-wisps, ironwood dryads, ettercaps, potentially giant spiders with them, giant spiders by themselves, giant toads, wild boar, an orc scout, an orc party with a captain, some goblin refugees, some cockatrices, or some harpies. We can also get some random rumors from the party, from these encounters, if you're able to deal with any intelligent creatures. That's also nice. RBG Grandma says they have a friend whose party under a different DM joined forces with the orcs, ultimately creating an empire with an orc army. Players, agents of chaos, always. That's a cool, that's a cool story. But I think that'd be fun. I'd love to see the next steps, which is does one side try to usurp the other finally? Do the orcs try to say, like, we don't need these guys at the top, or do the party decide they could try to, I don't know. I mean, if the orcs are supplying all the manpower, I'm not sure who you replace the orcs with, but it seems like a very precarious alliance. If I'm the orcs, I would only manage to stand having some few number of non-orcs as leaders for so long. All right, so we get rumors, we got some random encounters. I really like the idea of having some extra rumors that are tied to the encounters. If you're able to deal with, say, the will-o-wisps, they might tell you something on this list, which is separate than what you get in town, which I like. Now we get to Ironwood Gorge itself. Roughly 15 leagues north of the tower runs a river, swift and cold. That's, remember, 40 miles essentially through the forest, we get to the river, which then leads to the gorge. As one follows its meandering line 10 or 12 miles northwest, the earth begins to heave up on either side in formations of weathered rock. Thick marsh grasses conceal footpaths of hardened mud that run along both banks. Each shows signs of frequent passage, footprints, spear divots, and the like. The cleft widens as the walls of the gorge grow higher. Roughly 8 miles upriver, the paths on either side mount ledges that follow a gradual ascent along opposite faces of the gorge. Progressing along either of the ledges for another 2 miles brings one to the eastern edge of the adventure map. See Upper Gorge. Okay, so 40 miles. So it's 5 or so miles to the edge of the wood. 40 miles through the wood to the river. Up the river about 10 or so miles. And then you're kind of at the entrance to the gorge, and then up the gorge. How long? Let's say how long each of those? Roughly 8 miles, and then it's at least 8 or so, maybe 10 miles. So yeah, this is a lot, which does make me wonder at and maybe something to think about. Maybe I'll talk about it. Is, I don't want to say economics is not the right word, but you have orcs coming. The orcs also have to make a similar treks back and forth. And it doesn't seem like, so we have orcs here. We have in the random encounters in the woods, we have orcs, which makes sense because orcs have to be, if they have folks watching the tower at every time and they're taking intelligence back and forth, they're scouting, and what are they doing back and forth, there's going to be orcs wandering around, scouts and just parties of orcs, that assumingly these are the ones moving back and forth to take over watches from the other set of orcs. What we don't have is maybe what I would expect to see is at least one forward position camp. I can't imagine that these orcs want to go back and forth all the way, because this is several days marching. I mean, 40 miles through the woods, I don't know, depending on how you're doing your travel, that's probably looking at 3 days. I don't know, 2 or 3 days minimum. And maybe it's 4 days if you're including whatever the hiking is here. I don't know. It's quite a trek. Quite a trek. So we have the rock slides, which is cool. We have the gorge floor. There are pike in the icy waters. There's also a giant pike, and then atop the bluffs, so you can climb the face of the gorge anywhere you'd like to. Just good notes to have, because goodness knows players will ask if they can. So here in the gorge, you might find some other, these are wandering monsters. You might find some other adventurers. You might find some zombies, a cavern, some cavern rock mantises, some dwarves, some bats, orcs, war dogs, spitting beetles, nematodes, a carcass scavengers. Probably something like carcass crawlers or something, whatever they're called, but probably maybe just a non-copyright type, different name, and then a gray worm. Interesting of the zombies. I like that you might run some other adventures, but you can't run into adventures. Don't show up in the woods though, which is interesting. And here we have the upper gorge. So once you've traveled up and you get into here, or wait, no, man, I think, are you coming from this direction? Wait, which way are you coming from? Seems like maybe you're coming from this side. Maybe not. And then we have more of it. Yeah, I think you must be coming from here. And then you can get in some of these different areas. I think. The Split-Tongue Tribe. The orcs at Ironwood Gorge refer to themselves as the Split-Tongue Tribe after the fact that members must ritualistically split the ends of their tongue with a knife. Ouch. There are scores of orc warriors in the tribe, initially 60 in addition to those mentioned in the area descriptions. The game master should keep a record of losses of the tribe from random encounters. Once 60 orcs have been slain, captured, otherwise accounted for in random encounters, then orcs are no longer met in the wilds of the Ironwood, and the harassment of the Bleak Tower abates. I always like that stuff, and I think that's a good idea. Tell us what the maximum number. It's not a never-ending supply of orcs. There's no spawn point where orcs just sort of come into existence. Keep track. And that makes it opens up some different tactics. If the party wants to be militant and sit there and say, you know what, or I mean, my party wanted to do this at one point, different situation, but they wanted to. So when I was running my party through like my kind of when I inserted the Caves of Chaos essentially into my game, one of the things I talked about was the sort of the wagons of these creatures bearing wagons traveling to and from the caves, from to or from parts unknown to the caves. And the party at one point decided that they were going to try to ambush them, and there wasn't enough traffic, and they got impatient because it was that would have been sort of a long-term strategy, but you could see it working, and here it could work. The party could sit there and say, you know what, we're gonna forget going to the caves. We're gonna try to set up a choke point where there's a natural choke point, which is kind of where this gorge is, and we're gonna see if we can get some small groups of orcs, get them out of the way. And if you do that enough, and you can be smart about it, you can whittle down the numbers until you don't have very many left, which totally work. Of course, as the party, you have to somehow become aware of those numbers, which might be tricky. But I like that, and I like that when you're hammering down these orcs, if you're able to as the party, then that should be reflected in what they're doing. If the orcs, if you originally at 60 and now they're down at 30, maybe they have to start prioritizing, and they can't have quite so many. We already have our ticking clock should slow down. We should see that, okay, at the fort there aren't as many attacks. Maybe if you're checking out how many orcs are watching the tower, you can figure that out. Maybe it goes from 10, now it's just 5, right? So you get all these cues that, oh, well, hey, what we're doing is working, and then if we want to keep doing that, we can do that. So I like being able to track, or I like having it that, hey, we're not going to just have unlimited orcs until some objective is reached. That if you just want to whittle them down or attack them or create a bomb and set it off and blow up 50 at one shot, then you can, and it will do something. Troubling nightmares. Iron Gorge is often under the effect of this. What does that say? I got my glasses again. Is often under the effect of a disseminate nightmare spell cast by the orc high priest from the depths of the lower gorge caves. Refer to Appendix D for description of the spell. Okay, the spell's range covers roughly the entire adventure map, but not beyond it. Interesting. So we'll have to see what that spell does, but probably gives you nightmares, which is a cool atmospheric effect. And I like that it's not just there, but it actually has a source which you could potentially stop, which is presumably this high priest has to cast it. I imagine it's not forever duration. So every day, week, whatever, the guy's got to ritually cast this spell. So if this is proving a problem, and we don't know what it does quite yet, but I could see messing with your rest, doing other things like that, then you can get rid of it by getting rid of the high priest. A note about mapping. Ironwood Gorge is a complex system of caverns. The game master should strongly urge the players to maintain a map as they explore. Okay, I'm going to skip that part, but that is good advice. We get the key to the upper gorge. Southern ledge, northern ledge, ogre cave. And I'm not reading through all these descriptions. If there's anything special pops out, I'll hone in on it. This, just to keep in mind, if you're tuned in and you missed the beginning, this was published in 2011. So it's definitely following the old school style of organizing things. If you're expecting it to look like kind of the Into the Odd Dolmenwood sort of thing, it doesn't. It's old school. Nothing wrong with it. Old school. The old school sort of traditional approach worked plenty well for a ton of time, but it uses that style. So just keep that in mind. Though it looks like they're not calling out specific read aloud texts, for example, unless that just means anything in here. I have to say, on the formatting thing, I like that they bold the monsters so I can easily find that. I mean, of course, and I like that they're naming things. It's not just room 3, it's ogre cave. Oh, and there's ogres in it. I might wish that they highlight that they bold the number also, but that's a small matter. Oh, look, like scavenger lair, bam, carcass scavengers. Or, oh, what's in the cleft? There are no monsters in the cleft. I can just see it. Those little touches I really appreciate a lot. And it doesn't take a lot to do as an author or layout person to go and highlight some things and bold them up so that we can easily pick them out of the blobs of text. So about the ogres, we'll see. I'll just read this one because it seems kind of interesting. The mouth of this cave is roughly 16 feet high. There is a stink about the place as it's home to 5 ogres. The ogres mostly keep to themselves, though late in the adventure, the orcs may consider hiring them as mercenaries to deal with difficult adventurers or to make a final push against the Bleak Tower. So that's cool. So these are kind of a neutral faction to start, but this also suggests there's a possibility maybe that maybe you get the ogres to turn against the orcs for some kind of price. If they're not already allied with the orcs, which it doesn't seem it is, then maybe you can turn them away from the orcs. The ogres have made sport of attempting to toss smaller creatures, halflings, goblins, and the like, across the gorge to the southern ledge. The feat is completely beyond their means, and their attempts are doomed to come up woefully short. Oof, that's rough. Rough for the creature being hurled. A character facing this misfortune suffers 10d6 points of falling damage as they plummet to the bottom of the gorge. All right. Frederick says there are neutral forces that may be for hire. Excellent. So that's one of them, right? Always good to make note of these two, right? It's probably something just a good rule with these adventures if you're running to read them is make up a roster sheet. Like I said before, here we know that there are 60 orcs plus the ones in specific rooms, 60 free-floating orcs, and so however many set orcs. Write down the number of ogres, maybe put some lines out there, say, okay, faction, group them by factions, and then maybe you can even put, obviously we know that the orcs are an antagonistic faction, but put some kind of mark maybe for other ones that are neutral, and if you want to roll some dice over playing this over multiple sessions as days and weeks pass, how these factions are interacting with each other, be a good to keep a hold of. And maybe the ogres lose one, and maybe whatever, then you could just kind of see how everything goes, so that when stuff happens late game, you have something easy to keep track of. Say, okay, we're down to 45 orcs, and 2 of the ogres were slain, so there are 3 left, and maybe that changes how the ogres feel about one side or the other. And then maybe there are these other creatures, there might be goblins around, and maybe the goblins will get the mix. Probably a good idea. And it seems like this might have a few of these, so probably even better idea to keep track. All right, so we got the gorge stuff going on in the gorge. Damp passage, subterranean fungi, an incomplete trap. Ah, there we go. This is a nice little cue. The first time the party enters this chamber, they encounter 6 orcs in the process of resetting a trap. Nice. So then presumably next time they come, they may not find the orcs, but they should hopefully know that there's a trap there. There's another trap over here. There's what's a bullhead? They are commanded by an intimidating orc lieutenant who wears a mask made from the cracked skull of a minotaur. Oh, that's cool. There's what's a burned out? There's been a fire here in recent weeks. Judging by the intricate patterns left on the spot, it appears that a vine-like plant once covered the floor of this immense chamber. The place was, in fact, once overrun by knotweed. Oh, cool. They burned it out. You can see the traces. I like that. Shows it's going to make the place feel kind of dynamic. Oh, look, there used to be something here and it's been burned, and you'll find the things that used to be there somewhere else, which suggests that ongoing concerns that are being dealt with or not. A whistling maw, a holes, ledge, the Nainhold. We have some dwarves. Interesting that the dwarves are hanging out here. I wonder if they have a story. So there are dwarves that reside in this part of the dungeon, which they have dubbed the Nainhold. To date, the humble warren consists of a shared room and a few unfinished passages. In the common room, one finds a low stone table, crates of firewood, and 2 golden boars that, when rubbed, confer a blessing on lawful creatures. Effectively the same as a bless spell. That's nice. An alcove in the western wall holds a makeshift forge with a narrow flue that runs roughly 70 feet to the surface. The eastern passage leads to a row of sleeping cells, followed by a set of stairs that proceed down to a long, unfinished passage. The dwarves of the Nainhold were once part of an expedition into the dwarf roads, long forgotten subterranean highways constructed by their ancestors deep in the bones of the earth. The expedition was going well enough until the dwarves came upon the orcs of the Split-Tongue tribe. The dwarves were vastly outnumbered and eventually forced to take flight up into the caverns of Ironwood Gorge. The bloodthirsty orcs hounded them there, and, cornered, the dwarves had no choice but to collapse key tunnels and seal themselves in. Slowly, they have dug their way out, reconnected passages, and begun to carve out a new home in the bedrock. Note that the dwarves of the Nainhold are visited on most nights by a disseminate nightmare spell cast by the orc high priest in the lower gorge caves, and we have to refer right later on to get what that does. The dwarves are wary of all adventurers, but are not blind to the value of capable allies. If the party can impress the dwarves with loud boasts of orc slaying, for instance, they might be granted an audience with the dwarves' chief, Odenfrith. The smaller chambers of the Nainhold are described below. So another cool neutral force, and I like the fact that here we have orcs, and we have the ogres there, and now we have dwarves there. And if you're thinking, well, this doesn't make a lick of sense at all, well, here we have the explanation, which gives a nice context. So if the party runs, just you as the GM knowing this, it's good to know. And then if the party runs into the end of the dwarves, it's like, why you have these horrible orcs are right here? How come you guys are right over here? They have this story to tell, which makes some sense. It totally, you can see that, right? They've been harried, they're running, they're under fire, they are able to take down some supports, or they use their dwarf skill with stone to bring down some passages, which stop the orcs from hounding them, but also trap them in. And they've decided to just plant their roots here. And maybe they feel like, I don't know. We don't know from this whether the orcs know that they're actively here. Seems like it would make sense if they do, if only just hearing things. I don't know. Maybe getting rumor, but maybe they can't do anything about it because they can't get to the dwarves, and they're not set up for mining operations. Also reminds me a bit of the Mandalorians in the first. I haven't watched the last season of the Mandalorian yet, but the Mandalorians sort of in these little refuges in other places, some of which are kind of unfriendly to them, but they kind of find a secret spot, hole up, and then set up their forge. Reminds me of the dwarves. And obviously this predated it, so did they read this adventure before making the Mandalorian? You decide. All right, we have the Dwarven Chief, Odenfrith, and also, let's see, Chato and Windus, who could be some for hire folks or kind of retainer types. Bulwark. The dwarves have reconnected the Nainhold to the larger network of caves. Here they have cut a 15-foot high crenellated wall that overlooks the bottleneck passage west, effectively a killing floor for any orcs foolish enough to venture there. A knotted rope lies coiled in the corner of the rampart to cast over the wall if needed. There are 3 dwarves armed with crossbows here at all times. They will shout for aid if attacked. In the event that they are overwhelmed, there are 3 portcullises poised to seal the eastern passage. Creatures attempting to go that way when the gates are triggered must make a dexterity check or suffer 3d6 damage. In either case, the passage is then blocked, and they are most likely trapped. A set of ascending stairs lies beyond the gates, then a straight 100-foot corridor to the heart of the Nainhold. Well, there you go. So maybe the orcs do know they're there, but it's hella dangerous and pricey to get to them. Probably the orcs figure just leave them alone. I mean, I would. Though I wonder why would the dwarves want to connect to the larger part? I think I would stay as far away from that as possible. Frederick says they always like the orcs are expanding, that the orcs are expanding the dungeon. Yeah, that's a cool idea. Oh, we got some orc sappers. Yeah. Nice. So they are doing stuff. They are working down here. And then we have the lower gorge map. Lots of twisty corridors here. There's a doppelganger. Ooh, a gang of 12 orcs guard this juncture. Each orc carries 2d6 electrum. A doppelganger is among them. Ever since the orcs had the misfortune of encountering in the depths, the doppelganger has been posing as various members of the tribe. Ooh, sneaky. It would prefer to assume the identity of an adventurer. Interesting. I wonder why. It will do everything it can to isolate and slay one, assuming their identity. In fact, should any member of the party be cut down in this part of the dungeon, the doppelganger will secrete the body away and rejoin the adventurers as soon as it is able, pretending to have barely survived. If it was a player character, the game master should inform the player that the abandoned character has been taken over. I would probably let the player play him as a doppelganger. Just ask them to be like, be sneaky. Don't give it away. The puking orc. Oh, there's a enormous bloated orc here. Yuck. And it's contracted an insidious disease that is particular to orcs that's caused them to swell up. Ooh. No, thank you. No, thank you. Now we get the key to the lower gorge. Nice artwork in here. It's simple, but it does the job. Otyug pit, a room of pots. An old statue. There's an orc smith building a stone furnace. Oh, wait, what's the crack? Oh, half-built forge. Oh, that's cool. So there's a crack here that leads all the way up, and they want to use it as a flue, and they're trying to build a forge around it. And they've got some goblins who are forced to help the smith. Great hall. We got the canine den where they're keeping their war dogs. A back tunnel. Orc shamans. Prep room. Ooh, some dire wolves. Some more goblin slaves. Maybe you can get these indentured goblins to help you out. And then the orc high priests. And slave nook, and then some zombies. Some more stuff. Ooh, there's a captured bugbear. I always liked bugbears. And here we have the orc warlord, captain, some more goblins, war dog, 2 trolls. So they got some trolls here they've put into service or hired. And the horde of the warlord is here. The warlord horde. Let me see what they say. What is in the horde of the warlord? There are 4 small chests decorated in a way that resembles the motifs found in the gnomish workshop. The chests are locked and altogether contain 6,000 silver, 4,000 gold, a bag of 14 semi-precious stones worth 25 gold apiece. Each chest is itself worth 20 gold pieces. Behind the chest is a careless pile of objects of varying worth. A small tapestry, a ceremonial platter, a silver amulet, a fox fur cape, 5 fox pelts, and 3 silver cups. Lastly, there are 2 beautifully crafted marble sculptures, one depicting a sphinx worth at least 2K, 2 grand in gold, and another depicting a writhing dragon that has unfortunately been broken, worth 600 pieces gold. Both would be extraordinarily difficult to move. Makes sense? Ooh, no magique in here, but maybe there was elsewhere. That's one thing. It might have been nice. I know they've used bold for the monsters, so you don't want to over bold it, but maybe use italics or something for items. Might be nice. If he's ever going to come out with version 2, if there's ever going to be a second printing of Ironwood Gorge, that would be my suggestion. Maybe I might want to go through, if I printed this out, highlight, underline that stuff. Then we get the sub-level key. We got some marble golems hanging around. And then you can hit the dwarf roads. So is this another way to sort of extend? What does it say? The dwarf roads. The passage opens to a stone veranda supported by columns carved to resemble ancient figures. Beyond lies an expansive cavern, so large, in fact, that its dimensions cannot be made out. The subterranean stream that runs through the above rushes through a crag in the wall just to the north and falls into the depths. A set of stairs cling to the outer wall, descending roughly 30 feet before breaking off, washed out by the falling water. A thick rope hangs from iron spikes in the ledge, extending more than 500 feet to the cavern floor. The party has found the ancient dwarf roads, a network of massive subterranean tunnels that run for uncounted miles. If the presence of the dwarf roads does not suit the campaign, the game master might consider designing more dungeon levels that connect here, or simply close this area altogether. The dwarf roads is a really cool idea. It could certainly be another type of Underdark, so to speak, right? It's vast subterranean areas originally by the crafted by the dwarves, but since the dwarves, it doesn't seem like they're using it. They're scattered. It's much like the kind of Middle Earth sort of orcs in at least in some ways, much like the orcs, like say in the time of the Hobbit, have sort of lost a lot of the arts that their forefathers possessed. They have these grand roads, and they can't maintain them. They're scattered. Hex, they're in isolated pods. So what has come to then inhabit these vast places? Who else uses these roads? Maybe, right? Could be some really interesting stuff here. Maybe the orcs are, this is only if you wanted to tie these orcs into some larger plot. Maybe there's something deeper down here that's sending orders up to the orcs. And I fear for which poor soul has to climb up the 500 feet to the cavern floor to go talk back and forth. Maybe they use some kind of device, or they've got to get some levitation potions or something. At least featherfall for the trip down. But yeah, it's a neat way of giving you alternate access to another part if you do want some kind of Underdark type thing, or just to other parts of the world. Who knows how far they go, where they connect, or to deeper things, more dungeon levels, they said, or opening up into larger plots that you can factor in however you like. I'll keep doing that. I don't mean to. And then we have an epilogue. So presuming that the party has squelched the great orc invasion, it was not 1 year ago that Umathis, Margrave of Blackmarsh and Lord of the Bleak Tower, was indeed turned into a vampire. Ooh. He feigned to fall ill and confined himself to his suite, coming and going by his chamber window under cover of night, to gather henchmen and slake his thirst on the beasts of the wood. The ruse persisted until his seneschal, Onomaclus, brought word of orcs in the Ironwood, and saw the Margrave of Blackmarsh merely cock an eyebrow at the dire news. The following night, the seneschal stole into Umathis's chambers and lay in wait by the casement. And when his lord returned in the aspect of a monstrous black bat, the seneschal did not hesitate, but imprisoned him in the lord's own magic bottle. Thus we come to the present, where the infamous thief Kulwick the Black, who has long stewed in the tower dungeon, at last escapes, if not with the help of one of the player characters, then by other means, persuading a visiting magic user to charm the warden, for instance. I'm not sure why anyone would be visiting this person down in the dungeon. You might have to go back and look at this, but I do like that they're giving you kind of more stuff that's going on here. One night, while the party is making their last foray into Ironwood Gorge, the Cutpurse makes his play, gaining entry to the Solar Suite and defeating the many locks and wards there. At last, he takes up the Margrave's magic bottle, the very thing that had drawn him to Blackmarsh, but as he removes the stopper, the thief promptly vanishes from the material plane, even as the dread vampire is returned to it. The now murderous Margrave wastes no time in seizing the tower, slaughtering his loyal guardsmen, and enslaving his once faithful servants. Only Osbert, the curate, escapes, striking out into the darkling wood, desperate to find the band of heroes who have rid Blackmarsh of one evil, hoping against hope that they possess the will to confront another more sinister. I like that. I like these giving us something else, right? We've done the initial dungeon, and that's the adventure. But here's something else you can do. Here's some continuing event. Now, the part about the thief, I mean, it's interesting, right? Oh, visiting, maybe aided by a visiting player character. Well, I didn't go through and read the tower in full, but I'd be curious to know how they imagine that would come to pass, unless the players are just like, hey, we'd love to visit the dungeon, and then the GM just going, okay, and the guard saying, here, sure, go down and visit the dungeon. Like, that's not a normal request. But you could probably build up that maybe the thief knows something about the wood. Maybe they say, hey, who knows something about what's going on? And they say, oh, Colwich, whatever, but he's in our dungeon and he's not coming out. And then the party says, well, hey, could we talk? We don't want to let him out. We don't know him from anybody, but we'd love to talk to him. We'd love to to see what he knows about this thing, because we're trying to help you defeat it. So any help we can get is awesome. And maybe they go, okay. And they begrudgingly let them into the dungeon to speak to the thief. And then the thief can kind of make his play, say, hey, you know, let me out and whatever. The one other thing is, did the thief not know what the magic bottle would do if he opened it? Is that something special? Is that, I don't know how these, I don't, again, I didn't read the listing of the magic bottle, so I don't know how it works, but I would have thought that maybe if the thief was specifically looking for it, they might know how it works. But I'm guessing maybe if it's the bottle that's empty, it works one way. If the bottle is full, it works something else. And maybe you can't tell. So that, if there's nothing in it and you open it, whatever. But he didn't know that the Margrave was in it. And so when he opened it, you got the old switcheroo. Again, it's probably something that I'm just thinking of as a question that the party's never going to ask, because this is all going to be coming up kind of after the fact, right? Who knows what even happens? All that you'll know when the party were to come back would be, well, the cleric's going to know that the Margrave is gone mad, escaped, whatever's happened with that. They're going to know that Kolwick is missing. That's about it. And then maybe they end up getting the bottle at some point, and then they'll see what happens. Hopefully they'll figure it out and not just open it, because if it works the same way, then a player character would get stuck and then Kolwick would be out. I'm not sure. But I like it. Me like it. And I almost wonder, would it be worthwhile? Would it be something to consider that the Margrave was working with the orcs? And that they were going to do something, maybe even, like I said, the betrayer, or let the orcs in. They were going to make sure he gets fed with their rampaging. They were going to bring back prisoners and give him an easy vampire life in the tower. But then he stopped communicating with them. And that has led them to assume that something bad has happened. Either that, or, either that he's gone back on his word, or he's been captured like he was. Something else has gone wrong. And so that kind of started these kinds of attacks, because maybe originally their plan was that he's going to take care of, he's going to get powerful enough, get enough folks around where he can kind of get the place subdued, and then just let the orcs in. Something to think about as a kind of maybe a different way to play it, if you will. RPG Grandma says the magic bottle trap. Yep, very much so. All right, so we've got we're in the Appendices. We have some pre-generated characters, which I'm not going to trouble with, but they're there if you need them, which is always good. We got some new monsters. So you have the Cavern Rock Mantises, aka Speleophasmids. 3 HD creatures. Looks like they've got just one attack. No treasure. Ironwood Dryads. Nematodes. The 6-faced orb. We get some new magic items. Blood Unguent. This potent healing salve is crafted by orc shamans. When the foul-smelling paste is first applied to open wounds, it actually deals 1 point of damage, causing a searing pain. Characters with only 1 hit point do not survive it. However, if the character is able to endure the following turn, 10 minutes, they are then healed d6 plus 1 points of damage. That's kind of cool, but just got to be careful. Thieves' Lantern. The Thieves' Lantern is a finely crafted silver lantern. When hoisted by a thief, the lantern lights of its own accord with a pale flame that casts a shimmering silver light at roughly the same intensity as a normal lantern. Only the thief holding it can see the light it casts. The flame and its light are invisible to all other creatures. It therefore does not affect the thief's efforts to hide in the shadows, although detected visibility will reveal the magic flame. The lantern functions normally for all other creatures. That's really cool. And then a smuggler's chest. This small, unassuming chest appears normal, but a well-concealed false bottom opens to a small pocket dimension. The pocket dimension is an additional 2 feet deep beyond the outer dimensions of the chest. The environment of the pocket dimension is the same as the rest of the chest. Jonathan loves that kind of lantern. Yep, very neat. And we have some new spells. So the one I'm mostly interested in is this first one here, Disseminate Nightmares. And this is what the Orc Shaman casts continuously, I guess, I guess he's got to do it, twice a day? Cast it over the range of the gorge. When the spell is cast, all sleeping creatures of opposing alignment to the caster are visited by a terrible nightmare. The creatures must fall asleep in range of the caster, even if only for a moment, to experience the nightmare. The nightmare is produced by the character's own psyche, but involves the vague image of the caster in some terrifying aspect. Upon waking, victims must make a save versus spell or suffer a penalty of -1 on morale checks and a -1 on attack rolls until they are able to sleep again. Nosorian says, "Oh, you thought thieves were subpar? Wait till you not see my lantern." Yeah, I mean that's totally a cool tool. So this is a cool spell. It just gives you a little penalty, but if you have you're coming with a bunch of hirelings and you're all sleeping in the gorge somewhere, chances are those -1s on your morale checks might be enough to sway one or more of them to flee when you least want them to. But it's not a huge penalty, so it's not something that's going to really handicap too much what you're doing. But you're gonna feel it a little bit, right? -1 on attack rolls. It stings. It's gonna sting a bit along with that morale check. So it's like a nice effect, and it's definitely atmospheric. But you also have a way to stop it, which is maybe you'll even see the high priest somewhere casting it out, and then you can say, "Oh my God, we got to take care of that guy. Get rid of him," and do that. We have some other spells: Mislay Object, Stigiswart's Striking Darkness, Warden's Key. RPG Grandma likes the spell. I agree. And then we get the SRD. So here we have the right now we have the sanction. This is the Bleak Tower, which we're reading, coming summer 2011. This is the book. Probably, I mean, I guess if they didn't change it by now, probably not going to change it. But since we're reading the book, we know the book has indeed landed. The module 1 in the series is the Sanctuary Ruin, which is also concerning the Bleak Tower. And I'll read the description here because why not? The Bleak Tower, seat of the Margrave, liege of the border province of Blackmarsh. The stage is set for a classic dungeon delve, unexpected villains, and a place for adventurers to rest and recuperate, not without its own mysteries. Sanctuary Ruin serves both as a standalone adventure or as the first chapter in the Blackmarsh series of adventures. Either way, the perfect addition to your old school campaign. The Sanctuary Ruin is a fantasy role-playing adventure for 4 to 8 characters of levels 1 to 3. Yes, 12-hour duration, so you got to cast it twice. And I think that I would, because I would like the party to be aware that it's happening, that the spell is happening. So we're going back to looking at Disseminate Nightmares. So if you missed it earlier, the Orc High Priest, High Shaman cast this essentially so it's on continuously. So in the area of the gorge, and remember, it's got 100 yards per caster level, so they can kind of coat the gorge in this spell. And it lasts for 12 hours. So every day he's casting it twice, keeping this effect going, gives folks definitely a fictional discomfort and then a minor mechanical disadvantage hanging around in the gorge, which I think is really cool. Now, I would want that the high priest has to go somewhere kind of central to the gorge, somewhere visible outdoors to do this, to conduct this ritual. And the reason why I want to do that is so that the party could get, if they happen to be they might never be in the right place at the right time, but they happen to be wandering around at the time, and you could pick what, maybe does it at sunrise, sunset, whatever times of days they pick to do the spell, the party could kind of see it, and then they'd have a chance to take that guy out, snipers to your posts, whatever, to take it out. But it's a neat idea, and I like the fact that it has I guess the big thing I like about it is I like environmental effects, but I like it when they have causes. And those causes are things that the party can actually discover. And not only can they discover it, they can also do something about it. And and doing something about it can come in different forms. In this case, you can kill there's only one person capable of casting this spell, as far as I can tell. So you get rid of that one person, the effect is going to go away. Great. In other cases, it could be, you're in the Whistling Gorge and it hurts your ears. What do? You could plug your ears full of stuff. You know what I mean? I like those things where there's a thing going on, but there's also a way to combat it in some way, and that's a cool thing. Also, you get to have some foreshadowing if they happen to get into the gorge and rest before they've met up with the orcs, because the nightmares will show aspects of the caster. They'll see these nightmarish visions of the high priest, which is cool, and which also help them in an odd way, help them identify the high priest if they happen to see him. I mean, granted, he probably looks pretty high priesty, but still. Yeah, this is a nice. Thanks again, Frederick, for sending this. I think this is a really nice adventure. It's pretty wide open. I think the one thing, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something to be aware of, is it's fairly I don't say linear because it's not super linear, but what it is you have a goal, right? And the adventure itself, and I, again, because I'm reading bits and pieces of it, I don't know how much it's hitting over the head with it, but the problem here is orcs, right? And so you're going to be tasked with getting rid of the orcs, and you have to get to where the orcs are, which is a fairly long crawl to get to the orcs. I didn't see any, if they give any sort of wilderness maps. I don't think so. So it seems like it's just woods to the river. You can figure it out, but it's 40 miles worth of woods, so it's not close. I don't know if it might make sense to shrink that distance. I haven't played it, so I don't know if looking and going, boy, that's a long, because that's the one thing is for this kind of, and maybe this is where some of the difficulty comes out, is that you're not going to be able to get back to the tower to rest up as often as you might like to. You're going to have to, I mean, the one thing is you're going to come up, this is going to push your tactics. This is going to push the party to try to figure out, I would think, where can we base camp? Where can we get somewhere where we're not going to be able to get all the way back to the tower every night because it's multiple days travel away. So we're not going to want to leave for that much time all the time. So do we set up some kind of base camp somewhere that we think is secure, that we can be closer to the gorge, but have somewhere kind of out of the way that we can get back to? Or do you, as a GM, say, you know what, I'm going to shrink that distance, right? I'm going to shrink it down to maybe a day's worth of travel or half a day, something closer, so that the party can reasonably come back and forth, because you do want them to come back to the tower, because the tower is where they're going to be able to get news of how they're doing, which I think is important. I like it. I like the fact they're going to come back. They can report to the guards or the seneschal and say, this is what we did. And the seneschal can say, hey, you guys must have done something, or the guards could be happy because, oh yeah, like you guys must be doing something because we haven't had an orc attack since you left. Or, hey man, we've been under constant barrage by orcs day and night. Like, what have you guys been doing, kind of thing. So I like that they, going back to the towers, a way for them to check their progress. And you can allay them, or you can give them some idea of how they're doing, and they can have this nice back and forth. So I like that. But the fact that it's 40 miles, I mean, it's more than 40 miles. It's like 60 miles, or I don't know, 50 miles away, that's just a long, expecting the party to make that haul a bunch of times. I think that's asking too much. And you could look at it and say, yeah, this is going to bring up some other tactics. They're going to get to really experience the wild and camping and making a real encampment for themselves. And it would certainly, once they get the idea of the scale, might encourage them to bring more people just to guard the camp, that kind of thing. But I'm also thinking it might be good if we reeled in a distance. Like I couldn't see some real reason why we had things had to be so far away. But it is nice and wide open, as somebody, RPG Grandma said, it can easily built off of. Absolutely. You just have you have this kind of, it really is following a very, it's sort of more focused, but kind of similar approach to the Case of Chaos. You have an outpost, you've got a place with nasties are encroaching on the outpost. Help us get rid of the nasties, kind of thing. But here, I do think it's a little bit more visceral, because they really are coming at the fort in a way that you get to experience if you run that prelude, and that's really, they're coming now. So you're right. So things are a lot more dire. There's a lot more pressure to kind of get something done than maybe in the Caves of Chaos example. But I like what's going on. I like the fact that there's other things like the thief in the dungeon, which might lead to further adventures, like the fact that the Margrave is a vampire who's trapped in a magic bottle. There could be some really fun stuff happening with that. I could even see some of the stuff working a little bit differently than how they've laid out. If you want to, maybe the party can get a hold of the magic bottle by accident, or something else can happen. Again, there's a lot of room here to play with. Like, what are the orcs? What are their real plans? Are they working with some higher, darker power? Were they working with the Margrave before the Margrave got caught? A lot of fun stuff, and there's not a lot of I want to say it's pretty lean, I guess maybe I should say. It's pretty lean and mean. If you want to add stuff, it's going to be very easy, because they're not bombarding you with a whole bunch of setting or backstory or things that you then have to read through and cut off. It's a lean, mean, adventuring machine. General Net says, I wonder if some of that's covered in the prior module mentioned at the end. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Because, yeah, this is the second in a series. The first one, let's see, going back here. What does it say? It's really, unfortunately, the description is super vague. It just, we're at the Bleak Tower, and then it's got some mysteries there. So maybe if the party came through the first part, maybe that's where they would have become somewhat knowledge. Maybe that's where the thief would have shown up, or where they would have gotten some knowledge of the thief or met with them. Hard to say. But of course, you can make it up. And I think an easy way, if we want to get that thief in the mix, to introduce them or to try to put some seeds of that escape in motion, is have the thief be aware of the woods in some way. Maybe a thief is one of the few people who's made it to the gorge and come back, and then can give them the general directions of it's 40 miles through the woods. Because that's the other thing with the party. I could see you might want to make sure that they can find orc trails leading through the woods, because with that much days of woods travel, easy to get lost, easy to get just sort of not disillusioned, but just disheartened because you're not finding anything. So you want to make sure for different parties that they know that it's 40 miles, or that once they get in there, they're finding abandoned campsites, trails, maybe, of course, if they run into an ambush or they run into an encounter with the orcs, that will work. The other thing is these woods are very busy. I might tone down those encounters a little bit, or push the distances out, or do something else. Because 1 every 2 hours, and you got 40 miles of trekking. 40 miles translating into that's many hours of trekking, which means you're going to be running potentially many encounters. I mean, they've tested it, but I might see how that plays, and maybe either reduce it or add in some other factors that might come to play, so it's just not a barrage. Because when you're going to be rolling for that long, you don't want to end up in a situation, or you'd rather not, I guess, where the party can't even really make it to the gorge without sustaining enough damage that they either feel the need to turn around and go back to the tower, or have to then camp for days and days and days at a time. I mean, if it happens, right? And then you can play it up. But it's another reason maybe to shrink the size of those woods, or at least try it out and see how it works. All right, folks. Well, thanks so much again, Frederick, for sending this my way. This is a great read. Something that it's an oldie but goodie, I would guess. I'm surprised it doesn't get a little bit more run. I know I've seen Frederick brings it up kind of wherever. I've seen him pull it up on in the OSR subreddit a bunch of times, but I don't see it mentioned much where else. So a little hidden gem for you. And I didn't notice, it seems to be well written. I didn't notice any. I mean, I didn't read it thoroughly, but I didn't notice any typos or anything. And I like the bolding and the simple layout, which works just fine. So that was Ironwood Gorge. If you end up running it, let me know how it goes. I put a link to it up on drive-thru if you're interested in it. Frederick, thanks again. Everyone else, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. And I will talk to you later. Bye now.